our kids. So I want you to realize, sorry, Kathy, I just realized it wasn't working. I thought that I had the mics all turned on. I'm not sure what was going on there. So hopefully you guys can all hear now. Yes, thank you, Tamara. I'm glad it's working. So that whole intro, I guess I should start over again. We're going to talk college savings and prep. And in general, this applies to every single family or, adults. If you're looking at going back, the same things are going to work for everybody here. If your kids are public schooled, if you're homeschooling, we all need to be experts on this in terms of helping our kids get the best options with hopefully no debt. That's always the goal. And in terms of this, realizing when we're talking guidance counselors, that we're talking 4 guidance counselors for 200 seniors. So you need to be the one that has your kids' best interest at heart. And they hopefully do too, but they can't keep up with that many kids. So as we dive in, that's what I want you to realize. That's where we're going to go. I'm going to try to cover a lot of information. Some of this is things that we have, been deep in the middle of. I've got 2 twins who are 10th graders, about to be 11th graders. In all honesty, they're really already 11th graders because we have so many credits built up. And for them, just I guess as a preview of where we're going and the map that I have built for them, I am their guidance counselor basically. By the time they graduate from high school, they will have almost 30 college credit hours. Why? First off, they're super smart and they're driven and willing to do the work. But mainly for you to realize, and it was a big realization for us, if I can get you college credit at home, it is so much cheaper than you getting those same credits on a college campus. So anything that your high schoolers can do early, you're saving them from that 600-person English 101 class, but you're really saving them from that $500,000 credit hour price where you're going to be able to get that college credit at home for, maybe $100 a credit hour. Crazy cheap compared to what you can get on a college campus. So we're going to try to hit all of that if we can tonight. It's going to be a tall order. If you've got questions that are not on topic, that is totally okay. I do not mind taking a little break and answering a CVS question or wherever you want us to go, but hopefully we can hit everything that is on my list too. So to start us off, in terms of college savings, you've got 2 options that are really your ideal options for putting money aside. And there are pros and cons to both of them. So to hit us there in the savings department, you probably have already heard of a 529 plan. So a 529 plan, they exist all over the United States. Each state is running that 529 plan. So you have a South Carolina 529, you have a Georgia 529. Anyone can contribute. Grandparents can contribute to these plans. The thing is, you really are going to want one that is technically in your state because a 529 plan gets us discounts. I guess that's the best way to put it. You get to kind of write off a tiny, tiny portion of them on your state income tax. A 529 plan gets you no tax incentive off of your federal taxes. So just to kind of emphasize the difference on those, the 529 plan is a tax incentive only for state taxes. However, anyone can contribute. Parents can contribute, the kid can contribute, grandparents can contribute. Anyone could put money in that account. Option 2, which is actually your more ideal option, if possible, is to use an IRA for your children's college savings. And I know this is crazy, that's a retirement account, but that's actually all of us. If you wanted to go back to school, you could take money without penalty from your retirement. You can use an IRA to pay college tuition. Anyone can, and kids can. So getting your kids a Roth IRA, that's the important one because a Roth IRA goes in after tax and everything it earns is tax-free. So Roth IRAs are amazing. It's what we, if we didn't need the basics of, the tax incentive, then that's where we would all want our retirement accounts. But most of us need that tax incentive, so we put it in a traditional IRA when we're saving for our retirement. But your kids don't. So here's the catch though. For them to have money in a Roth IRA means that they had to have a job. So this really isn't going to work unless your kids are, working as a model as an infant or, whatever, they technically have to have earnings. You're only allowed to deposit into an IRA what you have earned that year. Now, you want to talk to an accountant further on that as to whether or not they need to have a 1099 or a W-2. That gets a little gray as to whether or not that earnings has to have actually been documented and submitted to the government. So, most folks actually will say if your kids have a babysitting job or they're earning some steady summer money, that is enough to start that IRA. And here's the trick. It doesn't technically have to be their money. All that matters is that they earned the money here. Now, you're not going to get a tax incentive to do this, but instead you could let them keep their money, and the money that you were willing to put aside for their college that year could be that amount that equaled their earnings. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. So they maybe earned $500 on a summer job. You're not going to take all their $500. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but you could really say, you know what? I'm going to put $500 in your traditional IRA. It equals what you earned. No one's going to come and look to see, where that check was written from in the end. It's just the fact that it has to equal what they earned. They're not allowed to put more money than they earned into that Roth IRA. So the reason for this, why would I want to do that? It's really big. And most parents do not hear this. So if this is all you hear, this is going to be big when you hit your junior year in high school and your senior year and you start to fill out the dreaded FAFSA form. It's an abbreviation and everybody's basically given it a name. But that FAFSA form, if a kid has a 529 plan, it automatically upgrades that money and it becomes a negative. It hurts them in the end that they have this college savings account because the form views that money is dedicated towards their college, will be used towards their college, and can actually end up hurting them when they go to try to get some financial aid. Now, I'm not saying don't save for their college, but here's the catch. That Roth IRA, not even a line item on the FAFSA, not considered at all against your kids. So let's say, for me, I've got two brilliant 10th graders, kind of crossing my fingers that we can get some full scholarship money with their college savings in a Roth IRA. They don't actually have to touch it. Now, a 529 plan must be used for higher education. A Roth IRA does not have to be used for education. So let's say that you did get a little bit of money put aside in a Roth IRA as your kids are growing up, as they get summer jobs, and then they end up not needing it for college. It can just sit there, and it's going to sit there and compound interest for the next 40 some odd years. It's going to be a nice nest egg if they never needed it for college. So either way, you've set them up with a college savings account, basically, that is under the table in terms of the FAFSA form, which is amazing, and can convert basically long-term to retirement if they never need it. Now, again, this is a tricky one because they have to have earnings, but it is something I want you to consider because it's a very, very good resource for creating a college savings account for your kids. What we're not going to hit on, so I just wanted to hit on the basics of where you could put that money. So not going to hit on how to find that money. That's a whole nother video. That's all the videos we do put together, basically. But I do want to say one thing. If you are to a point where you're having to decide, do I fully fund my retirement this year with my $7,000 IRA amount or my 401k amount, or do I fund college? Retirement is always first. Hands down, always first. Your kids can get loans. They can get scholarships if they want to go to college. Those do not exist for retirement. No one's going to give you a scholarship because you were just great. Not how it works. So you need to make sure you're fully funding retirement before you even think about funding college savings. So as we dive in, I want to talk about the next part. So just general savings is great. If you can get money put aside, that's great. IRA, hands down, is the way we want to go. But there's a whole other side to savings, and that is having a mindset early that we are going to get scholarships. And the funny thing about scholarships is that most people ignore all of the tiny ones. we look at the biggest numbers. It's like the lottery. People don't play the lottery when it's got a tiny little amount. They all go out and they play like crazy when the lottery is some huge amount. I don't play at all. But everybody else, we're just going to put them in that category. It's the same exact thing that we see with college scholarships. There are a ton of college scholarships that are out there that are $500, $1,000 scholarships. And in the grand scheme of things, yes, that is a drop in the bucket. It's going to pay for books for one semester. But if you got your kid started as a freshman in high school, because most of these are eligible for any high school participant, doesn't matter what year you are. Some will specifically say high school juniors or seniors, but a good chunk are any high schoolers. Then they can start to apply for these scholarships. And you'll find that a lot of them, the questions are the same on the essays. So once they write one essay, they're kind of good to tailor it to the next one and the next one. And start to work on that pot of money. So these scholarships as well, a lot of them do not specify what they have to be used for. Just as a personal story on this one, when I graduated from graduated from high school, I did some of these little tiny scholarships and earned some. They're just cash. They're just paid to you as cash. My college was paid for. My parents had done something that doesn't exist anymore, but a prepaid plan in the state of Florida. On top of that, I had a Florida lottery scholarship that fully paid for me to go to Florida State. So go Noles, excited to not have any college debt from that. But those little tiny bucket of scholarships that I did win or earn, however you want to look at that, most of them is like winning, I actually went out and bought a car with that when I graduated from high school. So not necessarily have to be college funds. I needed a car, and it wasn't a fancy one, but it was enough money that I could get a good used car with. So, even if that's how you encourage your kids to spend their summer applying for some of these scholarships, it is still money that is going to help pay the bills, however they look at that. And whatever needs to be paid. So, not telling you to blow your college money on a car, but for me, I didn't have the money to do that. And these scholarships actually allowed me to get an item that I did need. My school was paid for. So hopefully, you can kind of tune that to how you need to as well. But to realize that there are lots of little scholarships that are out there. There are also lots of very big scholarships. So this is where I want to start in terms of you prepping and thinking. Now, obviously, if your kid's in kindergarten, this doesn't need to be on your list of worries right now, but I do want you to at least have in your mind what's available in our state. Does our state offer a lottery scholarship of some sorts? Every one of them has a different name. Florida, I don't even know what Florida's is called now. Back in my day, it was Bright Futures. Georgia's used to be called Hope. I'm going off of my husband's because he earned that one. In South Carolina, where we are now, is the Palmetto Fellows and the Palmetto Scholars. So finding out what is available and finding out how we earn it. You do not want to find out as a senior that how you earned it was something that you should have tackled 2 years ago. Maybe you chose to not have your kids take a standardized test for all of us that are homeschooling, and you missed it because you didn't take that test, and that test was required to basically, jump the hurdles to get approved for something. So that's why it's important to be your kid's advocate. Definitely if you're homeschooling, public school-wise, it's still a help. So here's an example. Huge ability for your kids to basically have a free ride to almost every university in the country. It's one standardized test. You take it your junior year in October. I remember taking this in high school. I remember no one explaining why we were taking this test. And in the public school system, you take so many standardized tests that you're like, it's just another one. This one just juniors take. And you don't necessarily put your all into it. You don't study beforehand. No. So this is the PSAT. If your kids are slated to take it, if your kids are rising 10th graders or juniors, you need to make sure that they are taking this. So it only counts their junior year, but 10th graders are allowed to take it. Even 10th grade homeschoolers can take it. Now the PSAT, why it is so important, it is part of the National Merit Scholarship Program. Some of you may have heard of the name. Some of you may have qualified for it, which you're amazing if you did. So National Merit Scholars, it basically picks like 50,000 of the top kids in the country. They can then qualify once they test well on that PSAT. They can qualify to be National Merit finalists. There's another little hurdle, but it's pretty simple. once you're a National Merit Finalist, colleges will pay you to come to them. I didn't know to even focus on this test. This was nothing to me. It was just another standardized test. But your kids, if you give them the ability, you take it in your 10th grade year, you get an idea of how they performed on it. If they perform great, then spend a little time over the summer before that junior year. It's October of their junior year, prepping for the PSAT. It's only going to help them on the SAT too. So it's basically like they're prepping for 2 tests at the same time. But qualifying for National Merit is basically a free ride for your kids. And here it's a standardized test that sometimes guidance counselors don't even tell you why they're taking it. That's pretty cool. You do well on that test and you can go anywhere you want in the country is pretty sweet. So, encouraging you on that one to at least know what they're taking and why they're taking it. We all know the SAT and the ACT are important. This PSAT is run by the College Board who runs SAT. So it really is, as you prep for one, you're just helping yourself get ready for the second. But you need to make sure your kids are ready for that. So 10th grade, they can take a practice round with the juniors. And then 11th grade, it's going to count. So just so you have that. So Josie, great question. What is the best way to find scholarships for adults? So there are a number of resources that are out there, Josie. You'll even find scholarship books that people have compiled. A lot of the scholarships are listed on websites. So as you go digging, you will find them there. And Josie, I would actually encourage you. You may feel like College Board is for high schoolers as they come out. And I'd say even on their website, they kind of gear it towards that. But even if you head to collegeboard.com, you create an account, you will see, let me share my screen with you. You will see on their site all sorts of things, but they have some really great searches. So they have scholarship searches and opportunity scholarships that you can search through. They also have a really great college search, which we're going to get to in a second. So looking through those. And then my husband is chiming in too. There are a lot of companies that offer full ride scholarships to online college programs too. So for you, if you're looking at going back, that might actually be something that you look into is, are there any companies that are offering just straight out scholarships to get something and then come work for them? So this is almost like what the military does. You get your GI Bill, but you'll find a lot of businesses that are doing the same thing. For high schoolers, that you'll even find businesses that are doing it on that junior and senior level. For the high schoolers, they give them free rides the whole way through, and then they work for the companies as well. So it's both ways, adult and kids on those particular ones. But it's definitely worth looking into. So in particular, I'm just directly on collegeboard.org. That's the website. Just search for College Board and you'll find it. But right down here is all of their searches and scholarships are there. So beyond that, the other places to look is actually local. So a lot of our little tiny scholarships that no one enters, that's why your kids need to get involved in these because no one's actually entering them. A number of them are good for adults as well to go back to school. So searching for local scholarships, like just Google, being your best friend. Columbia, high school senior scholarships, Columbia early college scholarships, whatever your city is, obviously I'm putting in mine. But you'll find a lot of things just using Google. And Wendy says a lot of the high schoolers in our area take college classes. So who pays for that? Great question. It depends on where you are, Wendy. So in the public school system, if I take a dual enrollment class, a lot of times the public school is the one that's paying for that dual enrollment class. So sweet. Your tax dollars at work are basically coming to help pay for that public school student to take that dual enrollment class. For homeschoolers, that is not always the case. So for a homeschooler to take an AP class or a dual enrollment class, the parents are funding that. However, I know in South Carolina, I cannot speak for any other states because my goal is to be the advocate for my kids on this one, so look for your state. In South Carolina, our lottery scholarship that exists actually applies to local tech schools as well. And so for 11th and 12th graders in South Carolina, as long as they take 2 classes at a local tech school, the lottery money will pay for it. Now, they still have to pay fees and books and whatnot that the lottery money doesn't cover, but it covers the tuition cost, which is still a pretty sweet help that a lot of parents don't know about. So that's direct dual enrollment, like your kid's going to go to the tech school to take the class or the 2-year school in your area. So check in your state to see what is available for dual enrollment high schoolers in terms of scholarship money, and you might find a lot. Now, I will say our local tech school, which is Midlands Tech in our area, actually has a dual enrollment page, and on their dual enrollment page, they spell that out. So they're not keeping it from you. It's not a hidden secret, and hopefully you'll find that same thing in the tech schools in your area if you want your kids to get some dual enrollment. So let's go there in particular. Well, I guess before we go there, for folks that have younger kids, how do we even start on this, and why? So what I want you to do first is really, hopefully you know your kid. If you don't, get to know your kid a little bit better. Find out what they're good at. Find out what they're interested in. Now, I'm not talking about a 5-year-old here, because my 5-year-old one day wants to be a dentist and the next day wants to live in Africa and take care of cheetahs. Those are really different. So we're talking, kids that are starting to get a feel for it. Middle schoolers are great at this. So your 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, asking them, what are you interested in? What do you love? Trying to already give them things that let them test that. So I have a 7th grader who really wants to be a vet. I have a 10th grader who spent the first 12 years of her life saying she wanted to be a vet, but it took us throwing her into messy situations to realize she does not like to be messy. This isn't going to work. You can't do surgery. You can't do things with dogs and cats and not get messy. Now, the current 7th grader, though, gung-ho vet. And I have no doubt she's going to do it. Giving her things that help her to test that, giving her things that help her to just encourage that is the best way to know if they're really heading in the right direction. So your middle school years, I'm not saying we're going to force our kids into a bucket and we're going to keep them there, but getting an idea of what your kids love and then using their summers to help them get some experiences in that. Maybe they shadow a vet. Maybe they, for us, my middle schooler is currently the one who's in charge of keeping up with all of the dog's medications as we deal with our dog and his healing. Letting her have that ability. She's got her little chart and she made it up and she writes in great. These are her moments to see, does it float her boat? Is she happy doing this? So letting them do that in middle school, getting some ideas. Why I want you to do that, the minute that they start to give you some ideas, you need to start researching. So I'm going to go back. College Board is where, they are for-profit. We're going to just go ahead and tell you that, but it's still a really good resource. They will actually let you search by majors and careers and as a college search. So why I want you to do this, once my kid gets an idea of where they want to go, what they're interested in, I can come in here, I can search majors and careers. It's going to pull up all the options. And I can actually put in vet. I can put in South Carolina. I can find out what our options are in this area, which are none. There are no vet schools in South Carolina. But what I can really start to do is see, based on what my kid is interested in, what do they need? That's what I want you to see. Maybe your kid, one of our 10th graders loves poetry. I struggle with this because the money side of me is you can't be a poet and pay the bills. So let's find something else that you love and you can be a poet who does that. I'm not opposed to you writing poetry. I just want you to be able to pay the bills and not necessarily live with me forever. So finding out what they're interested in is going to help you to know if that's what my kid wants to do, what do they need before they get there? So for example, if your kid is interested in math and sciences, they actually need different high school courses than a kid who is interested in arts and English. An example here is when it comes to sciences. So if I'm going to send a kid to get a biology degree, they won't even be able to get into the school or to get into the major for biology unless they have had now 4 sciences with 4 labs. This is big. That's a really big change because a lot of schools do not do 4 sciences with 4 labs. They do 3 sciences with 3 labs, biology, chemistry, and physics. But that earth science, your freshman year in high school, doesn't actually count. So it's finding out what your kids need and making sure that they're getting it from the start in high school. So to do that, you need to get an idea of what a high school chart looks like. And I am going to pull up one that I have shared with y'all in a post in the past. But it helps to have an idea for you of where your kids are going to go. So I'm going to share a link to a spreadsheet here in a second, but I'll share the spreadsheet. So this is literally what I have made for my high schoolers, mapping out where they're going to go. And you can view it with me, but you can't change it. That would make me very sad if you went and you started messing around with our high school plans. It won't let you, I don't think. So So this is our high school plan, and it is all colorful. And some of it is me keeping track of where we're taking that class or how we're taking that class. And notice that this actually starts, if you can see it or not, in 7th grade. So our kids were actually earning high school credit in 7th grade for Algebra 1 and for Cultural Geography. So it's checking, for a homeschooler, it's checking to see what are the classifications that make this a high school versus a middle school class. Can we start early on some of those credits? Why would I want to do that? Pushing a high school credit into middle school is giving me the ability to keep my high schooler at home their senior year, but to be earning all of those dual enrollments or all of those AP credits that they can. So if you can turn a middle school class into a high school class, then go for it. If your kids can handle it. Now I'm not saying let's kill your kids and make them like sit in the closet and cry here. We all know our kids, and you know what they can handle. These two that this plan is for, they can handle it. Sometimes I can't because they love school and they won't get up all day. And I'm like, please just clean something, help around the house. But they're super smart and they love it. So this is our plan. We're in AP Bio. We're in dual enrollment. We've already earned AP US History, all of these things. So hopefully you can kind of get all this. In terms of my public schoolers, this all exists too. Your guidance counselor is mapping this out for your kids, hopefully. But I encourage parents to still step in. Parents should know where their kids are going. Now, this is one where, for me as a high schooler, I was kind of motivated, but I didn't really have a plan as to where I was going. And I don't necessarily remember my mother stepping in on that plan either. She was pretty busy having to work a few jobs. So, this is where sometimes as parents, we just kind of assume that the school's got this. But maybe if we did step in, we could kind of help our kids steer a little bit better. Maybe they're not choosing a class that really, really needs to be on their list. I can tell you one. I loved it. It was a great class. Did I need to take it for 4 years? Probably not in high school. But one that our high school offered was stagecraft, and our class literally built the sets for all of the drama department productions. So we got to use power tools during high school. Had nothing to do with where I planned to go. It was a really fun class. Did I need to take it for 4 years? Probably not. It was a play class. I loved it. Could that have been a moment where maybe someone stepped in and said, hey, Jenny, you really could take this class and then not have to take it in college? And I probably would have absolutely loved that idea. So as a parent, you stepping in, I'm not saying you're going to force your kids to do nothing fun, but stepping in and just helping them make some decisions to see that choosing that dual enrollment class does pay off in the end. And Wendy's chiming in to say for Georgia that dual enrollment classes at state schools are paid for by a state grant. So there's a lot of states that are going to cover those dual enrollment classes are definitely for your public school kids. That is always covered. For your homeschool kids, hopefully they're going to get tied into those state grants and that lottery money in South Carolina, whatever is available. I've shared the link to this, so if it's super tiny and you want to look at it for yourself, you can. Just keep in mind what your kids need, and if you are looking at this or you pull it up later, this column right here, that TN is total needed. So it's the number of credits that my kids need in that category to be able to graduate. And this is actually in our area for homeschooling. We are covered by a homeschooling association that we're part of. So they are the ones that really tell us, you have to have this, you have to have this, which is great. I love the accountability. But that's what those numbers are, just so if you're looking at that column. So let's talk AP for a second. I saw someone else chime in on this too, and head back really to College Board for a second too. So I've told you to ponder, what your kids are interested in, what they're going to need as you're planning that high school schedule. But part of that pondering is also going ahead and doing a little research as to where you think your kids are going to end up. So as you're doing this major and career search, and I'm finding out, you love, one of our girls loves botany. She wants to go into ecology, and her words are she wants to be outside. She does not want to be behind a computer, which is great. So let's start to see what that major would look like for you, because I have no clue. And then let's start from there to see what schools even offer that major. So I'm under the major search, but maybe you figured out what your major is going to be. Then you could come back here and you can do the college search. And this way you actually can, under the college search, put in what your major is, what you're interested in. So we can come and we can click on majors and we can say, You know what? She's interested in horticulture, which we're going to put under science, math, and technology. And we can just sit here and narrow things down and find where are the schools. You can even come in and say where they are. So I can put in those majors, but I can also put in location. I can say, you know what? I'm interested in schools that are within 400 miles of South Carolina. That's still really far away for me, but you can get an idea of what schools offer that degree in your area. And why I want you to do this, I know that we are still talking about like 7th and 8th graders for some of you, is you need to know before you schedule your kids for AP classes or even dual enrollment, do the schools that offer the major that they would be interested in and ones that you're going to be willing to consider, do they even accept these classes? So I saw someone chime in on this too, that not all schools accept AP, and you're right. There's a good chunk of schools that do not accept AP, or they accept a very limited number of AP credits. So you could have your kid literally in all AP classes and they could pass every single test, and those colleges are going to look at them and say, well, that's great. I am glad you're an overachiever, but you're still going to retake every single one of those. You don't want to do that to your kid. You do not want to make them feel like their junior and senior year were worthless. Yes, they learned a lot, but none of it counted. So that is why, doing a little bit of prep, even early on, I know they can change their minds, but you have an idea because you did a little bit of searching, you found where those schools were that they were interested. You have an idea of what they are going to accept or not accept before you put them in the class. So once we find that school, then all you need to do is Google the name of that school and AP credit, and you will easily find it. So all I did, this is Clemson, and AP credit chart. This is on their website. I don't have to do searching. I don't have to call admissions. We're not going to sit there and go, okay, I have an 8th grader here. They don't want to hear from you that early. I can find everything that I need right here. This is every AP exam, and we'll make it as big as I can for you guys. So it's every AP exam, what the score is that your kids would need to get, and what the credit would be allowed for that score. If you don't find that exam listed, they don't offer credit for it. And you will find that on some schools that that test means nothing to them. But they're going to sit there and literally map it out for you as to what that credit was worth. So this is important before your kids take a bunch of AP classes. Even if we're talking freshmen here, you're not going to take them as freshmen. They can actually. You can take AP classes as early as 9th grade. A lot of schools won't let you, but you can. You still need to know what the policy is. And let me just go ahead and break it to you. If your kids want to go Ivy League, you're headed to Duke, you're headed to Emory. These are the big schools in the South, and a few others. They accept almost nothing. Dual enrollment from a technical school, nothing. They do not view that technical school is on their level. They will not accept it. So I'm not saying don't take it. They still want to see that your kid's an overachiever, but it's important that you know before you do, your kid does all this work and gets all stressed out over a test that means nothing, that you've gone ahead and you've done some of that research for them. Your guidance counselor is not going to do that. Your guidance counselor is going to help them. They're going to help them map out their schedule, but they're not thinking about what college they want to go to and what the policies are at that colleges. So you need to do that work for them. And I know that's not where you want to go. Not all of us want to be the ones digging, but you do need to do a little bit of it. And your main resource is definitely collegeboard.org. It's super, super easy to use. And Michelle's even chiming in Iowa that dual enrollment classes are free for homeschoolers too. So my homeschoolers that are out there, you should definitely be, finding out what your state's offering, because dual enrollment is great. In terms of the two, by the way, I just kind of threw both of those names out there. AP, to get the college credit, you actually have to pass a test at the end of the year. If you do not pass the test, you get nothing. Dual enrollment, you pass the class, you have the credit. So dual enrollment is really what most kids prefer. It's a lot less stressful. The class is still just as hard. However, in a way, the class is not being taught to a test. The class is just being taught fully versus specifically being taught to a test. And that, we all know what that's like. Things get left out. A great example is my kids last year. AP went all digital and AP cut their year off. So my kids were in AP US History last year, and the AP exam, they decided that AP US History would only go through a certain date. Well, at that point, their AP teacher no longer even taught any more U.S. history from that date on because we were teaching to a test. Now, our kids did great. They got a 5 on that exam, and the other one got a 4. Great tests. But if you need to ask them anything that happened after like 1940, they can't help you because they weren't taught it. They were taught to a test. So there are pros and cons to both. AP is technically, in a lot of colleges' eyes, is viewed as the harder option. I don't know that it is, but that is just how colleges can kind of view it. But both of them are just as great in most universities, and definitely public universities. Most public universities accept any dual enrollment, and they accept almost every AP exam too. So if you're looking at going public, that's going to be a really simple one for you. It's really going to come down to how much that exam is worth. So getting a 5 on the test may actually be worth 2 classes, and a 3 is worth 1. And so sometimes that's helpful too as you're pondering for your kids. So let's talk. Is it possible to get a scholarship for fully online college classes? Desiree, it is. So you'll find a number of these universities still offer scholarships. They still offer, basically merit-based scholarships. So the more that you're testing or the higher you're keeping your GPA, that those scholarships do exist. You'll also find, if you're looking at going back to school, that a lot of employers are happy to pay for those online colleges because they're cheaper than the local colleges are as well. So, hunting into those to see maybe who you can get to pay, it's not a scholarship, but who else would pay for it, and giving them that cheaper option. They're usually much more likely to take that as a benefit for you. We talked about state scholarships, but I do want to mention one other thing that I would encourage you to research for your kids, or get them to research, and that is, are there any in-state reciprocity offers? So this means that one state is going to offer in-state to folks from your state, in their state. You don't live there. So this is actually an example in South Carolina and in Georgia, for that matter, back and forth. I don't know for Georgia how many of you would qualify, but what exists between these 2 states, and there are a few others that are part of this program as well, is that if a science is not offered in the state that you live in, a particular science major, that you can go to another state and get in-state tuition in that college for that major. And so this is actually a lot. In South Carolina, we don't have a vet school. One of my older girls also wants to go into neuroscience. So that major does not exist in South Carolina either. It exists as a master's degree level, but not as an undergrad. So she can actually get in-state tuition at Georgia Tech for a major that is not offered in South Carolina. That is just knowing that that program exists. The other sweet part for us in that program is that she can actually take her lottery scholarship money with her to Georgia because that science degree is not offered in South Carolina. So you want to check and see what options are available for you in your area too. I know the states that are included in that, by the way, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee. Those are kind of the big ones, but there's a few other scattered ones that are out and about too. So that's really a big one for the Southeast. If you're trying to find a degree for your kid and it's not offered in your state, that's a pretty sweet program that exists across all of those states. So finding as much as you can do. Wendy is saying that they live on the Georgia-Alabama line and their county is allowed to go in-state to Auburn. Because you're so close. That's sweet. And I have an idea of right where you are, Wendy. My grandmother-in-law, I guess, used to live in LaGrange. So kind of knowing that whole little bit of Georgia and Alabama where you're so close. But that's the part of it, is you're kind of knowing that little perk. And as a parent, that's where we need to step in and know those too. Same for adults, by the way. So if you're trying to go in and you're wanting to do that same major, you can do that same program. So folks just don't realize it. An example that we've learned, the Georgia Vet School, because that's the closest vet school to us, not only offers in-state tuition to South Carolina folks for their vet degree, but they actually hold a specific number of spots every year for South Carolina residents because that is part of the agreement that they have with South Carolina. So this could, come out to work well for you too, and hopefully in the end, you'll find that little nugget that is going to be amazing for your kids. So one other big thing here is we're talking universities, and I've been talking public universities. I do want to tell you that private universities, they can actually be cheaper in the end. And this kind of blew my mind when I started to do some research. We have some good friends who sent their son to Wofford. And this is like our pastor's kid. How in the world are you affording Wofford? Well, these private schools, they actually have some pretty big endowments, and that means that they have money that they can give to kids. And so sometimes, depending on the scholarships that are available to your kids and the scholarships that these private schools are offering, the money will actually come out to be cheaper than the public university would. So if your kids are hunting around, it does not hurt to apply and see what is out there. This is also one for private schools, especially if your kid is interested in a major that they have or is willing to look at them. This is where your guidance counselor is going to come in handy. And this was big for us when we learned this. So as a homeschooler, we technically do have a guidance counselor that is part of the homeschool association that we're a part of. They will be our guidance counselor for us in these moments. But each school's guidance counselor is allowed to nominate children for that university's scholars program. And they have different thresholds of what they want. So if your kid meets the thresholds, and it doesn't mean they're brilliant. They're not scoring 1600s on the SAT. They're hard workers. They are testing semi-well. They have a good GPA. These are the main requirements. They, as a junior, this is important, not as a senior, as a junior, can be nominated for these scholars programs. And a number of private universities across the Southeast offer this program. You come in as a junior, not like going to school, but they're getting your name as a junior. They're going to give you some offers to come and visit them during the summer between your junior and senior year. And then your senior year, once you get accepted to the university, they actually kind of hand you a free ride. So much of that was started because your guidance counselor nominated you to their program. So that is the next thing to kind of go hunting for is, does that school offer a scholars program, a summer scholars program, a high school scholars program? Those are the things to Google. And you will find that a number do. In South Carolina alone, there are four private universities that do this. Once your kid is nominated and accepted, full ride, completely. Pretty sweet to a private university. So don't just look past them and think that your kid's not going to get money. You'll actually be pretty surprised at what is out there. So that said, this is also where College Board can come in handy. So I keep mentioning College Board. We're on the college search here. And I don't even know what I typed in, but it randomly searched for something. I'm just going to pull up one of these random colleges. Let's try to find one in the United States versus, I don't even know what it's searching for. We've got colleges in Azerbaijan that pulled up. Let's do this one. Let me search. No. Okay. Sorry, guys. Trying to be fast here and pick something that's good. We'll go Agnes Scott for all my folks in Georgia. So when this pulls up and you've searched for something, you can actually see on Agnes Scott what they offer, how much financial aid is met for students. So this is actually Emory that's pulling up. Let's go Emory because I like this 100% that's over here in the corner. So when you look at the school, you can see who's coming in. You can see how much they're getting. So this is how much it costs and the estimated cost to go to Emory, which is off the charts, crazy. And I can also see in terms of the kids coming in, financial aid by the numbers, 100% of the students coming in end up fully paid for. 82% of that is scholarships and grants, which I don't have to pay that back. Scholarships and grants is money that is just being given to me. 18% was through loans and jobs. So $50,000 is the average first year financial aid package. I don't know if you saw, but when we clicked on cost of attendance, the cost of attendance was $53,000. So here we're talking Emory. This is on like the next rung right below Ivy League. They think they're Ivy League. I don't know. But next rung, almost paid for. So you may look at your kids and be like, honey, we can't afford Emory. But in reality, depending on where your kids are, depending on how, what their SAT scores are or what they're interested in, a lot of it's not always based on those test scores anymore. They actually can come out really well. So this is all on College Board's site. I'm gonna make that go away. And it's really just sitting here and just clicking around. So we went to Emory, we went to paying and financial aid by the numbers so that we could see where folks were. So $48,000 was the average scholarship or grant award. That again, money they do not have to pay back. That's huge. So do some hunting for your kids. Don't necessarily assume it is the state school that's right next door. They really could have some free rides. And that said, I saw someone else chat going to a 2-year program. It is a great way to save. 2-year programs cost per hour is way lower. I don't know if you just saw Emory's cost per hour, $2,000 per credit hour. That's crazy. But at the same time, we don't have to force our kids to that 2-year program. We can give them the ability to see where they would go in a college, what the colleges would give them. And then if those numbers don't line up to what they can afford and what you can afford, then, let's stick with that 2-year program. But that college option may still be on the table too. So don't just automatically assume it's not. It doesn't hurt to do a little bit of hunting and to see what they may get just out of asking the school and doing a little bit of hunting for them is a great way to do it. So I love it. Wendy, I'm loving your questions all the way around. So how much does civic involvement play into getting more scholarships? It's huge. The more your kids are involved, and I don't mean in sports. Sports does pay the bills for sure, but a lot of our kids aren't there. I don't have anyone that's a soccer scholar or anything magical like that. Not going to pay their bills. So the other things that they can get involved in, it is going to open up more scholarship opportunities for them, not only in that they're going to be involved in more organizations and find out about more scholarships, but it is more things basically for their resume. So kids do technically have a high school resume. You may not have sat down and thought about what they're in, but having some activities that they're involved in other than I'm a church member and I'm part of the church choir, those are great. I'm not saying they aren't great, but your university wants to see that you're a well-rounded kid and not just a kid who's taking a bunch of AP and dual enrollments. And that's the same for my kids. They're going to go in with a ton of credit hours and they're scoring great on their AP exams, but that's not everything that these universities want to see. And when they fill out those big college scholarship applications, college applications, there's going to be so many questions that are not related to what they took in school. They're related to what were you doing? How were you volunteering in the community? What organizations were you a part of? What leadership positions did you hold? That's a huge one right now. Kids being in leadership positions. So finding those opportunities for your kids, and I know for some of us that means getting in the car and driving them places, and we don't want to do that. But that is a good way, especially if your kid is not a kid who tests well. They're a smart kid. They're a hardworking kid, but it doesn't matter what they do. That SAT score is not going to get any higher. You can still get so much by being a well-rounded kid, by being a kid that shows loyalty to something. Maybe your kid's taken piano for the last 15 years and they started as a 2-year-old. I don't know, you get the idea, but that still shows a big thing to college admissions officers, especially in a moment where this year, all of the current seniors, it's test optional. They're not even looking at the SAT for the kids that graduate this spring and are trying to get into colleges. So all of a sudden, colleges are starting to have this view of maybe the test doesn't matter. We've seen a lot of universities actually state that after this year, they're still going to be test optional. That SAT and ACT are not going to necessarily count into whether or not you get accepted. And that means they're not counting in to any financial aid packages as well. So not 100% test. It is based on what your kid's been involved in. And that's actually been one where I feel like I've struggled. So as a parent, my brain is spinning to see, okay, I've got 2 more years. We are involved in a few things, but we haven't necessarily branched out. We haven't found those leadership positions. And so some of that and digging is on my plate coming up too. Michelle, can parents fill out scholarship applications for their kids? Yes and no. I mean, you could definitely do some of the basics for them, but most of those scholarship applications really consist of an essay that your kids are going to need to write. You can help them. You can give them some, guidance on their outlines and help with their grammar. Or my husband can. I don't do grammar, but that's really where you need to come in. It's not really fair if you're writing those essays for them against someone whose kid wrote them themselves. But I will tell you, once they write 1 or 2 of those essays, so many of the prompts are very similar, and it's not going to be that hard for them. So just to get them to get past the first 1, 2, 3, and then they'll start to see, oh, I got this. This is kind of coming as a breeze once we've gotten those first few under our belt. Great, good question, Tracy. So going back to the savings accounts, the 529 versus the Roth. Does a Roth, if you open it while in high school, is it worth it, like in 10th grade now, or will you have will you have to? It's not going to have a ton of compound interest for sure, Tracy. But at the same time, it's not an account that my kid has to use their freshman year. There's actually a lot more money available to freshmen than there is to upperclassmen. So if anything, maybe that money that you put in their 10th grade year, they could use that money come their junior or senior year. Maybe their freshman year, they get some scholarship money. They do work study, which is where you get a job on campus, but it's kind of federal money and it's paying the bills. You do a work study for a certain number of hours and it counts as really way more money than those hours were worth. So work study is a great way, especially your freshman and sophomore year. Those aren't hard years. You're getting some of your undergrad out of the way. You're not working on your major stuff yet. And then my junior and senior year, I'm getting into my major work. I'm writing my thesis. I don't have time to be working and doing a job on campus. Then maybe that's when that IRA money comes into account. And now that IRA money, it's been sitting there for 4 or 5 years and it has had time to grow. So, anytime you can put money aside, you should never look at it and say, is it worth it to do that? Yes, you've put money aside, whether it grew in interest or not. It was still money that you saved for college. Now, should I then not do a 529 plan? I don't know. Go ahead and just do it while you can. Do what works until they're getting a job, just to put some money aside and then switch to that IRA. Don't keep funding the 529 when they have a job and you can be funding an IRA. Because again, the 529 is going to hurt them when they go to fill out that FAFSA form. It's going to look as if they have this huge bucket of money available to them. And so then in terms of financial aid, they will be available for less financial aid offers versus the IRA that doesn't even show up on the form. Okay, and yes, so Michelle, you're right. So as long as the kid is writing the essay, I think you're fine. If you're just doing some of the basics for them, kind of like filling out the forms in the doctor's office, I think that's okay when it comes to scholarships. Yes, I fully gotcha. Okay, so trying to make sure that we've hit a lot of things here. Oh, we've missed one whole avenue of college credit, and this one specifically is meant for adults. So if you are looking at going back, your kids can do this too. High schoolers can definitely earn these. But if your kids are looking at going to school or you are looking at going to school, then one whole avenue that is available to you is CLEP testing. Now for me, I always thought that this meant something that you would take at school. I remember at Florida State taking a test and seeing kind of where I would fall in their math program. It didn't necessarily count as hours. What that did was more a placement exam. The CLEP program, again, this is run by College Board. I told you this is like our site for the night. All I did was just search College Board for CLEP, C-L-E-P. CLEP exams were really designed for adults that were going back to school so that you could use your knowledge that you had from the world to test out of some of the basic level classes. And there's a lot of CLEP exams that are available. Now, this one's tricky because not all universities accept them. Most public universities do. A number of private universities do not. But there are 33 exams in 5 subject areas. That's what this says right here. You take the exam and it's going to end up counting as college credit. So one exam can earn you a whole 3 college hour, one whole class. Kind of depends on how you test and the test that you're taking. And there are a lot of them. So I'm just going straight to the CLEP site that, again, College Board runs. You will see all the various tests that are available. You can see right here which colleges accept CLEP. You can kind of do some hunting. This is a great way for kids and adults to be earning some basic college credits, very little cost. You have to pay for the exam. And the last time I was looking it up, I want to say the cost was like less than $50 an exam. It's really, really cheap. Oh, 89. Sorry, each exam costs $89. Compared to an AP exam, which is even more than that. This way you can take the test. If you pass the test, great. If you don't pass the test, you can actually take it again. And these are done kind of in testing centers, so it doesn't have to be on a set day at a set time like the AP exam or the SAT. This is actually much easier to take for an adult who can kind of work it around their schedule. So you'll find here's business classes, composition and literature classes, world languages. So you may actually have the ability to get college credits without having to do anything. And yes, these exams may exist as well on your college campus. The trick is knowing whether your college campus is going to give you credit for those exams or whether it's a placement test. So instead of getting credit for Spanish 1, I'm basically going to just start in Spanish 3. The difference here, why that matters, if you're trying to get a degree, you need a certain number of college hours to be able to graduate. So if I'm taking a test and it doesn't give me hours, it just gives me a higher placement, I still have all of that college ahead of me. I still have to earn all those hours. But if I'm able to actually count the test for the hours, then that's money in your pocket that you didn't have to pay for, and it's time because you just got rid of one whole class that you don't have to make up with a higher level class. I can graduate one step earlier. So that's the big thing to check between taking the one on the college campus, make sure it counts for those hours, or taking the CLEP test. Just make sure when you're on the CLEP website, again, this was right at the top of the homepage, is before you even start here, see which colleges accept CLEP. And it is a lot of universities, but it says more than 2,900 U.S. colleges accept it. But if you're headed somewhere in specific, you don't want to do this and then it count for nothing. But it is a pretty simple way to get some college credits out of the way for $89, which is about as cheap as they come in terms of college credit. So hopefully that's a very big help for anyone that is wanting to go back to school or wanting to go to school for the first time, but you're not in high school. This is for high schoolers or for adults, and it really is geared towards adults. And again, Michelle, so the fees for this CLEP exam is $89 a test. It's probably more so just to keep people from not just retaking them. There is a fee to take them, but you can, study up, you can get ready for it, and then you can pass that test and be done with it. Anything to save some money in the end. Yes, and I agree in terms of like getting out of freshman English, all of those are huge. And that's where your AP classes can come in, but this might be just as simple for your kids too, or for the adult to get those classes too. But hopefully, that's maybe a new one for some of you, but at least a reminder for others that it does exist, and it's a great way to get some extra credits without paying for them. So in general, kind of a recap here, I do want you to be a little prepped. I want you to have that, kind of get the spreadsheet out like we did, have an idea of where your kid's going, have an idea of, maybe I could get them that AP science class their senior year if we push something into their 8th grade year and we turn that into high school. Have an idea of how we could maybe open up some opportunities for college credit, even just their senior year. You don't have to start super early. We took AP US History in 9th grade, and we kind of had to do it wasn't technically lying. Our kids have a lot of early credits. They are technically in 10th grade, already juniors in terms of credit hours, but even where they're taking their AP exams, or their AP classes, for homeschoolers, we have to actually do this through a program. Homeschoolers are not allowed to do AP on their own, so they take this through an online Christian homeschool program, but it allows AP. We technically kind of broke their rules. They don't allow 9th graders to take AP exams. AP does. So for me, they technically were a year ahead, and we put in a different graduation date for them. They could graduate next year. I just don't want my 17-year-olds on a college campus, so they aren't going to graduate next year. You don't have to do that, though. We don't need AP all the way here unless your kids can handle it. But even your senior year, if we're able to knock out 2 or 3 college credits our senior year, that's almost half a semester in college that you paid for at home, super, super cheap. So, having a plan early definitely helps. You coming up with that plan, not assuming the high school is going to come up with it for you. So homeschool or public school here, being a little proactive with your kids, having a plan as to what your college is going to accept. What are they interested in? Does the college even accept AP? Is my kid brilliant and they're going to go to MIT? They accept nothing. You're going to have to take it all at MIT all over again. Having that kind of guide. And then thinking about what do they want to take? Do they want to do dual enrollment? Do they want to do AP? Do we want to CLEP out of things? Think about, with all those options, how much you really could have out of the way. No freshman English 101, no basic math that with 600 kids and a TA that doesn't speak English in front of you. That was my husband at Georgia Tech in some of his classes. That's really hard. Is that really where you want your freshmen to be? So getting these classes out of the way is saving you money, but it's saving them some frustration too. And the same for adults, taking that time to CLEP out of some things before going into the university and starting and paying an exorbitant amount of money for a class that you really didn't need to sit in. You knew that. So that's why that CLEP exam is there too. And Hazel, for us as homeschoolers, because we have to take our AP classes through a certified program, we use a school called The Potters School. So you can just Google that, the Potter School with the V in the front. There's a few other places that also offer it. There's Pennsylvania Homeschoolers, which is online, and you don't have to be in Pennsylvania, but they offer AP classes. I think Big River Academy offers homeschool AP classes, and the Homeschool Legal Defense now has a online school that also offers AP classes. So, it's you figuring out what you wanted. For us at the Potter School, our girls get live classes, so it's live instruction, 1 to 2 days a week. It depends on the AP exam or the AP class itself. Some of them have been 1 day a week. They're currently in AP Biology that's only 1 day a week. AP US History was 2 days a week. And then they have assignments to do outside of class. We've been very happy. I mean, they did get a 5. One of them got a 5 on the AP US History exam last year. One got a 4. And it's right in line with who works the hardest for sure. But for me, I took AP US History in high school, and I didn't get enough to get credit in college. So I'm pretty proud of them for those 4s and 5s, and we've been very happy with the Potter School. There are, again, 4 or 5 options. There's not a lot, but there are 4 or 5 options for online AP courses for homeschoolers. And then they will take that AP exam with a local school in town. So you will just find a local school that will allow homeschoolers to come in. They're used to it. But that is the only way to take the test, is to actually go to the public school or to a local private school that is offering that exam. But you are allowed to take the class online for sure. And Hazel, yes, so this whole thing is saved, and as soon as we're done, you can actually go back and press play on Facebook, and it will start over from the beginning. So before we end, I want to mention, this is not free, but a really good resource that we have done. They don't know that I'm going to mention this. I meant to reach out to them and see if they would offer us some kind of deal. But there is a lady, she lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, and she runs online workshops to help your kids get ready for scholarships. She even runs like a scholarship essay writing course, and her company is called Scholarship Gold. So just Google Scholarship Gold. She has online classes. They aren't super cheap. They're like $70-$80 for a class, but they're like 3-hour long classes. And just a ton of information and a ton of resources in terms of finding scholarships, getting started. She even does a class for 8th graders, so we're both on the same page there if you wanted to jump into that one. I've not taken that one. We did do a class that was actually for raising juniors to help us get in our mindset for that junior year. But I would encourage you, if you've got some high schoolers, it's totally at least worth looking into or seeing if there's someone in your area that does the same thing. Her class is not necessarily Carolina-based. It really is general education. That's a lot of good information. So having sat through it, having paid for it, I'm going to tell you, I felt like it was totally worth it. And the joy is that once you sit through it for one kid, you're totally ready for all the other kids. You don't have to re-sit through it. So Scholarship Gold, if you wanted to look her up, she doesn't know I'm sending you there, but it was a good help for us, and hopefully you would learn a lot too. Good question, Reniva. So and we should have hit this too. Is there an advantage to investing in your state's 529 plan versus another state's 529 plan? So, and she said that in particular, hers is ranking really poorly. So yes and no. Going with your own state's plan does give you a discount off of your state income taxes. And going with a different state's plan, if you're seeing a ranking and you're seeing the investments there, maybe you could earn some more with another state. I will tell you, we have a South Carolina 529 plan, and South Carolina doesn't rank that great. But part of your earnings are really based on what you put as the age of your kid. So the younger they are, the more aggressive their earnings are going to be. And the closer they get to graduation, the less aggressive their earnings are going to be. So for our 529 plan, we did this years and years ago before I learned that this is not the way to go. We only opened up one, because with 529 plans, you can actually change the beneficiary at any time. So you can even split them at any point. I did not, with 5 kids, want to have to try to keep 5 different plans going. And I didn't have that much money to keep putting in money in all these accounts. So we have one 529 plan. Yes, we have 5 kids. It's technically in the name of our oldest kiddo, who I don't think will need it. She's super smart. I think she's going to get a lot of scholarships. So my plan here in the next year, before I fill out a FAFSA form, is actually to change the name and put it in my 5-year-old's name and kind of start all over again. But that one plan, I will tell you, we put in $10,000 over time in that account, and it has doubled in value. Now, we started putting in money a long while ago, And that's all we had put in, by the way. I'm not saying that's all we have saved for college for them, but college, again, is not a priority for most of us. It needs to be your retirement and not your college. And in a family of 7 people, there's only so much money. So you need to be smart. But we have physically, we've put in $10,000 into that account, and it has doubled in value. She's 15. It's been in that account probably since she was 3 or 4 is when we opened it. So I feel like it's performed well. Could it have doubled in value beyond that? Possibly. The problem with investing in a different state's 529 plan, which you are allowed to do, is that you have no tax incentive to go with that other state. So I don't get any discount off of my state personal income taxes when I invest in another state's 529 plan. So that's kind of the struggle for you to decide. Is it a help? Do you even need it? It depends on whether you're even paying state income taxes. If you aren't, then it's of no benefit to you. There's no federal impact to be investing into a 529 plan. It would be amazing if they made one, but they aren't. So for now, I mean, you probably could go anywhere if you wanted and focus on that. But really, you deciding how aggressive you're going to be with that investment is really what is gearing the earnings on that account. And this is also like any investment account, same with your Roth IRA, if you went that way for your kids, is you analyzing what are the fees behind this. Do they have an investment fee? Do they have a management fee? And looking at those fees. And so if I find a state that's got a much lower management fee and they're earning great, then maybe that is the way I want to go versus paying management fees for something that's not earning well. And that would be the case in any investment account, even your retirement account. You should be looking at your management fees and your investment in fees and trying to lessen those because they're all hurting you. You know, if you took $10,000 in management fees each year, that was $10,000 that didn't have interest next year and didn't have interest the next year. So those do add up for sure. So the IRA, any IRA, Roth or traditional, but your kids want a Roth. There's no reason to put your kids' money in a traditional IRA. Any IRA does not show up on the FAFSA. It does not take into account any retirement accounts whatsoever. It does take in that 529 plan. So that's why for my 10th grader now, it is on my list of things to do this year is to change that account beneficiary to not be in her name, because you can do this at any point. It can totally be in your name, and then you can put it in your kid's name later if you do have a 529 plan. But my plan is to change it out of her name so that when we go to fill out that FAFSA in another year, it won't even factor in for her FAFSA. It will be in the 5-year-old's name if I want it to. And just to give you that idea, you could move it around to children. Obviously, at some point, some child is going to have it on their FAFSA form. But we can, take it off the kids who don't need it at all, who will get scholarship money, and we can maybe have it for that kid who won't get as much, because every kid is different. I am not going to put, my middle kid is not my twins. My middle kid loves the world and is full of joy, but getting her to sit down and always do her schoolwork, it's not always the way it works. So, you learn that quickly when you've got multiple children, that you have to treat them as their own individual person. And that can be the case too in terms of college savings. So it can become her money if that's what needs to happen, versus the kids who, I'm holding out that this PSAT this fall, we're just going to cream it and we're going to get national merit and we're going to be set. Don't worry, if that happens, I will totally let you know. But that is my inward parent goal if they can handle it. And yes, Tanya, so Scholarship Gold is where I want you, if you're wanting to look up that program. Again, it's not free. It's just a really good resource, and her classes, even if you go hunting and find other people that have taken them, as I did before I paid, every single person was like, yeah, sitting through one of them is great. I don't know that you need to sit through all of them, but sitting through one of them is great and worth the money. Okay, we hit a lot of things tonight, and hopefully this is helpful. If there's something we didn't hit, if you're watching this after the fact and you've got other questions, I will gladly try to answer them. So send me an email, jenny@southernsavers.com. Send me a Facebook message. I am fine either way, and I will try my best to get you an answer. I may not know, as we're in the middle of all this ourselves, but this is everything that we've learned and things that we've applied. And for us, hopefully is going to pay off. Our kids going in with their freshman and sophomore years done in basic classes. These girls are going to be able to go straight in and start major work, which is sweet because I'm not paying for basic classes that I know they already know. So hopefully some of that will help you too in getting rid of some classes, getting those costs off of your books only helps in terms of how much you're going to have to pay long term, half over what it would have cost to be in that university because you've done half of it before you got there. That's our method, anyway, of trying to save for sure. So I hope that this helped you guys. We will definitely be back with couponing and whatnot as we go forward. It was just a fun, kind of different topic that folks specifically asked for tonight. And again, ask away if you have other questions too. I'm glad to help. So thanks for watching. I'll be on tomorrow at 2 with all of this week's drugstore deals. So hopefully you can catch that live or after the fact as well and be able to get to the store and grab all of those things that are running this week. So thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.